In this video, we're going to learn about the function keys that are set up in our examples workspace. And here is a listing, and we'll go through these one at a time to show how they work. And then at the end, we'll look at the configuration to set these up. The first one is to toggle on and off the construction class. So if I'm, for example, in a drawing with construction class elements, I can just simply press the F7 key, and that toggles on and off the construction class. And it's doing the same thing as underneath the view attributes if you were to do that manually. And so that's just assigned to a function key. The second one is the F8 function key, where we toggle between the black background and the white background. And so in a drawing, if I select F8, you will see that it toggles between the two. This is doing the same thing as in your settings, user preferences, under view options, the black background to white toggle. Sometimes this is useful when you are training and your screen is projected to the wall, or perhaps you prefer a lighter background. You will have this option with the F8 function key. The next one is the F9 function key to open the 2D and 3D views side by side. In particular, this was set up for OpenRoads Designer, where you could do the right-click, view control, and select plan in 3D. Well, the F9 key does just that. So if I press F9, it will open up the 2D design view on the left and the 3D isometric view on the right. And you can always go back, right-click, and go to one view and bring that back as well. The next entry is our F10 function key, and that will dither any reference files. And so if we take a look at this file, if I press F10, you will see that my existing terrain, my geometry, and all the annotation for the geometry, which are in reference files, they will soften or dither or grayscale, however you want to label that. And so that is operating on the references under the properties and the adjust color. So it is making adjustments in that particular dialog. And that's, again, that is just a toggle. So that's the F10 function key. Very useful when you have a lot of reference files. The next entry, F11, will track our geometry. And so, for example, if I go back over here to my corridor file, I'll turn off my construction class, and then I'm going to press F11, and it's going to ask me to pick my alignment to track. And as soon as I select my alignment, it shows my station, my offset, my elevation. It'll even show the horizontal radius of the curve. And this can be used on, I believe, a profile as well. And what that's doing is underneath terrain, it is executing the command analyze point. This next entry, the function 12 key or F12 key, will open the ITL template editor. And so we'll simply come in, press select F12, and it will take us right to editing our templates. F12 key is editing templates. The next entry, Control F1, and also the one after that, Control F2, are controlled by this text file in the examples workspace. And I'll talk more about that when we look at configuration. But in this text file, I'm listing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels that I want to honor when I'm using these two particular entries of Control F1 and Control F2. Control F1 will toggle the ability for a element to be snappable or not. And so I put in parentheses here, think about grid lines. When you look at what levels I've listed, my cross-section major and minor grid lines, my profile sheet major and minor grid lines, and my external cross-section grid boundary, we typically would not want to snap to those grid lines when we're doing annotations with the civil labeling tool. And so if I come over here and look at a drawing model for cross-sections, for example, if I say place a label, notice how I can snap to these grid lines. And that's going to be pretty useless when we're trying to label a profile or a cross-section. So if I press Control F1, it modifies all of those that are listed in that that snappable toggle levels file that makes each of these entries on these levels non-snappable entities. So now when I go to place a label, I can no longer snap to my grid lines. And so now I can just focus on placing the label where I actually want to place it. So you can see how I can snap to the right place now, and it'll produce those labels. And so that is the control F1, is it makes these snappable or not snappable. Now, if we take a look at the control F2 option, that will toggle those same level lists on or off. And so if I just press control F2, that just toggles on or off any levels that are in that text file, and it just completely gets them out of the way. So if you don't want to see them when you're doing your annotations, you can press Control F2 and just turn them off. And that's doing the same thing as going up and turning off the levels manually. It's just doing it for you automatically. So that is your Control F2. The next one I want to take a look at is Shift plus F1. What this will do is it will take your existing terrain model, typically a survey terrain model, and it will make an additional model within the file that is temporary, reference in your original model, and vertically exaggerate so that you can detect problems in the vertical direction more easily. So let's take a look. In my survey terrain file here, if I look at my references, I don't have anything attached, and there's no additional models in this file, just to show you, just default. And so now if I press Shift F1, it's going to give me a little warning message about the elevations that you're going to see are exaggerated, so don't try to use those elevations. So I'll select OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find an area that I want to zoom in on and check. So let's go ahead, and before I hit this dialog, I'm going to just rotate this view a little bit. And so let's pick this up. So I want you to see this real time. And I'm going to vertically exaggerate this. And notice I'm in this temporary model, so I'm not actually affecting the original survey data. And I'm going to say I want to exaggerate by the amount of 5. We'll say exaggerate, and we give it a point to exaggerate about. And then you will see this terrain model that is vertically stretched. And so sure enough, if I look right here, this could be a problem, right, in our survey data. And you could turn on, your illustration mode or different modes here. But by exaggerating, we are able to detect problems more easily. So I select remove exaggeration, it takes it back down. And then I can just re-exaggerate and to give it a point to exaggerate about. Once I close this dialog, this temporary model that has been created will disappear. So I just close it, and we go back to exactly right where we were at, and no longer is that temporary model in place. So that was just for review, Shift plus F1. The last one I want to discuss is Shift F7. This is just simply to toggle on or off line weights. And so where F7 would toggle on and off construction class, Shift F7 will toggle on and off line weights. And so if you just wanted to see everything in your view with a line weight of 0, just to make things easier to look at, you can do the Shift F7 and do that. And that's all that's doing is, again, in your view attributes, it's toggling off for you the line weights toggle. So that's Shift F7. So that is the list of the ones that are worth mentioning here in this video. And so now we need to talk about how to make all of this come together. So first we want to take a look at the file resources that you need to have in place. And so the first one is under preference seeds, we deliver the function key menu file that has these particular settings in there. So you will need that in your workspace, and you will also need to have that pointed to somewhere in your configuration. And so here we have the configuration variable that's actually loading that file. We also need a couple of different MicroStation Visual Basic Application or VBA files. The snappable toggle and the view set both need to be available. And so those we store in the macros folder. And with these two macros, you will have a couple of different README files. So you've got one for snappable toggle, one for view set. And then you have configuration files. So you have your snappable toggle levels.txt, which we looked at earlier, which is the list of levels that you want to either make non-snappable or snappable, or turn them on or off. And then the other is the configuration file that goes with that right-click view control that controls your custom menu. And so just a refresher there, that is this menu right here, this right-click view control. Now, in order to get that to work, you will also need this custom menu, and that's in our graphical user interface folder, the GUI folder. And that's what gives us that right-click view control capability. And it is also calling that macro, that view set macro in several instances to set up the views. And so they all are working together. And then the last thing we want to take a look at is what do we need in our configuration to actually make these work. And so you'll see I have these lines highlighted here. Your VBA search directories, your VBA autoload projects is listed a couple of times, one for view set, one for snappable toggle. Then you have your view set settings file. And then lastly, you have your civil snappable levels file, which dictates the levels that you want to turn on or off. And then lastly, the configuration variable that you need to get that right-click view control to show up is shown here in the ms_GUI DGN lib list. And so you'll see that that is loaded through this configuration variable. And then the last thing I want to take a look at here is on that right-click view control, where it sets up these different options and what they look like. I want you to understand there is the ability in this view control configurations file, it's just a text file, but there is the ability to adjust these view orientations, if you will. For example, if I look at this one called Plan and XS, you cannot rename what they show up as in here. Don't touch that because that's called, that specific name is stored in the VBA macro. But what this means is it's going to open up view number 1 and it's going to open up view number 8. And then these percentages are increasing from the upper left corner to the bottom right corner. And so if we look at view number 1, the percent top is 0. And so that means the upper left corner, and the percent bottom is going to be 57%. So if we think about plan and cross section, so if we open that one up, so we have our cross sections here. What we're talking about is 0, 0 is up here in the upper left corner. And then over here, I'm at 57% down, but I'm also 100% to the right. And so if we go back and look at that, you'll see I'm 57% down, but going left to right, I'm all the way across. Now for view number 8, which is my cross-section drawing, I'm starting down at 57% and going all the way to the rest of the way to the bottom, and I'm going completely from left to right, 0 to 100. And so that's the way this is set up. And if you have multiple entries, for example, Plan, XS, and 3D, in this case, we're opening up view 1, view 3, and view 7, and then these percentages, again, all starting from the upper left corner. And so just to show you, we did add one additional in here. If you wanted to work on 3-dimensional cells, we opened views 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we even now allow the setting of the rendering in each of the views. And so we thought that you might find this video helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to log a support request and we can assist you further.